And now we're live, and yeah, we're good to go.
Hello, everyone
So this is yet another podcast, and we were
of the Jack and Jill Show.
indeed. What are we talking about today?
Today we're going to talk about 5G, and if we get to it, we're going to talk about body hacks we think will happen in the future.
Well, the 5G was really more of a side note.
Okay.
So what I was trying to explain to you earlier, so we were talking about 5G earlier today while we were on a drive, and I was just mentioning how when 5G becomes more prominent, there's going to be a lot of problems with things like ransomware and denial of service attacks.
Oh, can you tell us how those work and why 5G makes that possible? Because
Yeah, I think that's the part that we didn't get to.
okay.
So
Because I actually don't know anything about 5G at all. I have been living under a rock.
well, first of all, 5G is just a new standard for phones, for cell phone data transmission, essentially. So just like we have right now, 4G or LTE, which is kind of so we LTE and 4G are basically kind of interchangeable for the most part. So whatever we currently have in terms of telephone technology for cell phone technology for in terms of speed, data speed of communication between the cell phone and the tower,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's considered to be the fourth generation. That's why they call it 5G or 4G or 3G,
Mhm.
etc. So
Mhm.
it's the fourth generation of cell phone technology, essentially, right?
Mhm.
And that's what we're on right now. And they're moving to the
So the cell phone companies are upgrading their hardware and
well, not so much upgrading because 5G or the fifth generation of this technology is going to bring much faster speeds in places like arenas, in places like large stadiums. You know how, like, when you go to a large stadium or an arena, a lot of the times it's kind of difficult to get a signal because basically everybody's communicating with the same set of a few dozen towers, right?
I have no experience with that, but if I imagine it like when we were doing FPV drones and everybody's signal was competing with everybody else's signal,
Pretty
I
much.
can see that being a problem.
Pretty
Yeah.
much, yeah. So what 5G offers is now you can have a lot more of a range. So now you can range from like 5 gigahertz all the way to 22 gigahertz. So you're looking for those millimeter waves, essentially tiny, tiny little waves. They don't have much penetration, but they can carry a lot of data because they can, basically the way data communication works for phones is the faster your hertz, your refresh rate, right? No, it's not your refresh rate, it's your hertz, it's your frequency. The higher your frequency is, the more data you can carry,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why is that? Well, because you can encode more data into. So if you're transmitting, for instance, if your transmitting frequency is 5 gigahertz, right?
Mm-hmm.
That means that you have 5 gigahertz worth. So
In the same cycle, like
yeah, in the same cycle, you have 5 gigahertz worth of up and down,
yeah,
that
cycle.
waveforms,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if each of those waveforms encodes a piece of data, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you can encode that much data. And if you go to 22 gigahertz, then all of a sudden you can encode basically 4 times more data because you have 4 times more peaks, 4 times more valleys in your transmission. So that depending on how you structure your protocol, you can use that data, or you can use that to carry a lot more data, or alternatively to talk to a lot more phones at the same time.
I see. But that also means that the data won't travel as far, right?
Yeah, the data won't travel nearly as far because the higher the frequency, the lower the penetration of the wave is. So whereas something like really low, like 800, oh, we had a microphone failure.
Sorry.
Something like 800 megahertz frequency, for instance, will travel through walls, through buildings, maybe even through thin concrete walls even. But something like 5 gigahertz, for instance, already has trouble traveling through that. This is why, for instance, if you have a Wi-Fi router at home and it has both a 2.4 and a 5 gig signal option,
Mm-hmm.
you really want to choose 5 gig for when you're close to your router, but if you're really far away from the router, 2.4 will actually give you better connection because it will punch through your walls better.
Oh.
So that's for you guys if you're having crappy connectivity at home with your Wi-Fi router, make sure you have the the 2.4 also turned on because that's going to carry your signal further than the 5. Not as fast, but in any case, so we kind of sidetracked. But 5G basically, the upshot of it is all the phones in people's pockets over time will become faster and faster and faster in terms of how fast they can access the internet.
Do you think we need all that speed?
Well, some people say we do, but it's not really clear why. There's many other benefits to 5G. Like I think the bigger benefit that we're not going to see right away, but we'll see over time, is that the connection speed will be just basically more consistent. Where right now, some parts of the day you can have great signal, and other parts of the day in the same area you have still good signal, but it's just way more congested, and as a result, not nearly as fast.
So does that mean you'll be able to stream your Netflix more consistently?
Pretty much.
Throughout the day?
Yeah, stuff like that.
Or YouTube or whatever?
Netflix, YouTube, stuff like that. Streaming services basically are becoming very big. And, like 5G is going to be used for that. I think maybe 5G is going to be an option for many people to use for the internet, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
Like we live kind of off grid, far away from civilization. So we use 4G wireless hotspots in our house. That we actually have 2 of them. We pay quite a bit for them, but they give us very good connectivity for what's available over here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in the future, people even in cities might opt out or opt in to 5G for their internet. So, like, let's say you're renting an apartment or something like that in downtown. Let's pick downtown San Diego, for instance. You're getting an apartment. It might be conceivable. It's conceivable that in the next 5 to 7 years, you might be getting your internet through a hotspot, rather than having an actual wire, an actual guy come into your house and set up the internet. And it might be just as inexpensive, because 5G will become that inexpensive.
Mm-hmm. And are we going to move from 5G towards like 22 gigahertz or like higher gigahertz?
Well, 5G is just, it's not 5 gigahertz. 5G is just 5th generation. So 5th generation technology includes a range, all the way up to 22 gigahertz. So that what that means is basically exactly like what I was saying. So the 22 gigahertz range, it's probably going to come faster to things like stationary applications.
Mm-hmm.
Where, again, ISPs in downtown, like let's say, again, downtown San Diego, if you want to start an ISP, all of a sudden maybe you can buy some bandwidth or some, rather, spectrum from people who don't need the spectrum right now on 22 gigahertz,
mm-hmm.
and start providing 5G internet
mm-hmm.
over that spectrum in like densely populated areas.
Mm-hmm.
And you can get very quick connections, up to a gigabit.
Who owns that spectrum?
It's been auctioned off to different telecoms and stuff.
So the government owned that.
And I think above 22, I don't think even anybody cares, because there is so much spectrum because you have to remember that this is one of those things where it doubles every time you go up. Let me see if I can explain it better. So when you go from 1 gigahertz
mm-hmm.
to 2 gigahertz, right?
Frequency.
In terms of frequency,
okay.
Right? You can pack a lot more data and a lot more stuff in that second, gigahertz than in the first gigahertz.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you go to 4 gigahertz, then you can pack way more in that. When you go to 22 gigahertz, you can pack even more in it. Why? Because it's becoming more and more narrow over transmission.
Mm-hmm.
How can I explain it a little different? Basically, if you think about it, you need so if you want to open up a channel, right, you need to clear some frequencies on the left and the right side of the channel, right? So let's imagine that you have a channel that you want to open up at exactly 1.2 gigahertz, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you need to clear below and above that channel, maybe by 50, by 50, no, more like 80 hertz or so, or like 100 hertz, right? You want to clear it off so that way nobody's stomping on your signal, right? Well, so basically you're clearing 100 hertz, right? And you're clearing 100 hertz. If you're clearing 100 hertz out of 1,000, well, there's only 10 of those. If you clear it after 1,000,000, well, there's 10,000 of those, right? But if you're clearing it after out of like several billion, then so basically there's just more room. As the numbers get larger and larger, there is more room in the spectrum to carry more and more channels. But the downside is that they're becoming more and more narrow. What that means is the actual waves, the higher you go, so you go to 22 gigahertz, then you go to like 40, 50, 80 gigahertz, those frequencies, it's harder to saturate those frequencies because there's like so many more channels, but they're also much more narrow, where they become basically like little beams, where you have to perfectly aim at in the direction where you want to send your signal in order to actually get your signal there, because the higher the signal is, the less likely it is to bounce off of of anything, really, right? So like a 5 gigahertz signal will still bounce around the room a little bit, but a 22 gigahertz signal, it's basically point to point at that stuff. It's not bouncing anywhere. You can reflect it sometimes, but you need to. So like for instance, if you need to go around the building, sometimes you can reflect the signal, but you're not. It's not happening, organically, so to speak, naturally. So, but anyways, that's.
How does that?
Go ahead.
How does that work? Is it that every individual user gets like a different band, or like, can you have multiple users on one band of the frequency, or?
So let's see.
Because I imagine these like as river flows, right? So the river, if the river is wider, there is more water flow. If the river is narrower, there is less water flow. But does that river feed everyone at the same time?
Well, currently, so I don't know much about how the 5G spec is like several thousand pages, but so I don't know how it actually works on 5G, to be honest. The way it used to work in the past, and I'm sure that's exactly what we're doing now, only faster and better, is it just time delimited channels. So basically, I say, let's say we have 4 people, person number 1, person number 2, person number 3, and 4, and I want to talk to all 4 of those people at the same time.
And where are they located? Are they located right next to each
other? Just imagine a example, right?
Okay.
So let's say I want to maintain 4 conversations with 4 different people all at the same time, and we're all sitting inside one room, right? One option would be to do something like time delimited conversation, which basically I talk to person number 1, then I talk to the person number 2, then I talk to person number 3, and number 4, and then come back to number 1, right? And then just do that in circles, right? And that's essentially what radio communication does as well for cell phones. It just slices it up that way. There's also ways to slice it up in different ways. Time, amplitude, frequency modulation, like where you can, or division, where you can delimit different users based on different channels. I think what we usually do basically is just channels plus time. So that way you get like a slither, just like on a modern computer, for instance, right? You have to remember that even modern computers, the brand new modern computers, they all are single thread, single processing, right? I mean, they're multi-threaded
thread
on the CPU, but still, there's only one main thread, and everything else bears out of that thread, right? And even back when we had single core, single threaded CPUs, right? Even then, we were still able to use multiple programs at the same time, right? Well, that's because all modern operating systems are time-delimited operating systems, meaning that your CPU can actually only run one set of code at a time, but what it can do is cleverly run one program, then the next one, then the next one, then the next one, and it just happens out of all the tasks that it has, and it just happens so fast that it seems like all of them are running at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like for instance, in Linux, when you do ps command and you list all the running tasks, there might be like like 100 tasks, for instance, running like in a busy server. And you look at those tasks, well, they might be all running in a single core, right? Like for instance, when we are doing it on a Raspberry Pi or something like that, they might be all running on a single core basically. And the way they can all run in the single core is because it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, or just like one of them runs, then the next one, then the next one, and then the CPU comes back. And the job of the kernel and the operating system is to basically decide who needs more attention, who needs less attention, who can be throttled down, who needs to be, throttled up, if that's a word. Like Mac OS, for instance, does that, where the app that the user is interacting with and is looking at, the app that's on a screen, it gets a lot more CPU resources, CPU slices, and then apps that are haven't requested heavy compute time and are just sitting in the background, or like on a different screen, if you swipe away from one screen to another, they don't get nearly as much CPU attention, because the CPU or the operating system makes the assumption that like, oh, you probably don't want, what do you care to animate the video on like a website that you've opened if you're not even on the screen, even if it's not on the screen, right? Like that's pointless. So your operating system basically just starves that app of the CPU powers.
Oh, nice. We really veered off course on this here.
Yes.
So tell me how ransomware or attacks work on 5G networks and why that's a real problem.
Well, what brought that on actually is the Cloudflare, the company Cloudflare, recently emailed me, or us, about one of our servers. And I mean, Cloudflare is a very popular content delivery network, CDN, and like they basically help you reduce the load on your own servers. And we have an account of them, and they've been emailing all their customers saying that there have been these attacks, these ransomware attacks, by the group called the Fancy Bears.
Oh, fancy.
It's hackers from Russia. And the Fancy Bears have this very professional email that they send to a bunch of companies, like the company that your brother-in-law actually works in, or my brother-in-law works in. And a lot of the times those emails go to trash and shit like that, or end up in some manager's, go through later pile. And then next thing you know, this company's entire website and their entire intranet is taken offline. And
why can they? I mean, if they open it, right?
No. The email has nothing to do with it. The email is just so basically what the Fancy Bear hacker group do is they send you an email saying, we're going to take your network offline if you don't pay us this much money in Bitcoin to this address by this time. Okay. And they usually give you about 6 days.
Okay.
And then they say, to demonstrate this is real, we're going to start attacking your system in 30 minutes, and the attack is going to last for exactly 30 minutes. Don't worry. The attack will only last for 30 minutes. We will take down your system right now, and if you don't pay up in 6 days, we will permanently take down your system and maintain the attack for several weeks.
Oh wow, digital terrorism.
They're basically doing digital terrorism, right? And why are they able to do so, right? So how do these attacks work? Many people, when they see hackers, or hear about hackers, they think like, oh, it's a bunch of people feverishly like typing and doing things. But in reality, what they're doing is basically harvesting phones, harvesting modern, especially Android phones, because they're far easier to. Well, it's not so much that they're far easier to crack. It's just that on Android phones, you can sideload programs a lot easier. And because Google makes it easier to do so, which does give users some level of, better level of control than Apple. So I'm not necessarily criticizing that. But what I'm saying is, as a result, a lot of Android phones are infected with command and control software. And that command and control software, what it does is it allows basically a hacker to say at some point, hey, Mr. Cell Phone, I want you now to start sending packets either UDP packets or it's difficult to explain exactly how it works. Basically, they use DNS amplification or UDP not UDP, DNS or what's that the time protocol? What the hell's it called? Like the Internet Time Protocol. Do you know what it's called? It just straight up fucking failed out of my head. But there's all these time servers on the internet that allow you to ping it, and then it tells you what exact time it is, so you can set your clock on your system precisely. That's how your phone gets its time. That's why, and that's how everything pretty much nowadays gets its time. It's called an NTP protocol, if I remember correctly, and that network time protocol. And that protocol has a few reflection attacks in it. So what that does is it allows an attacker to amplify their attack by attacking an NTP server in such a way that then the NTP server sends the data back to your target, to the person you are trying to attack in real life. So that amplifies your attack. So you send like one packet in and get 15 packets out, and it allows you to attack basically all these NTP servers, and all these NTP servers then attack your target essentially. So there's many different ways to do it, but basically it all relies on having a bunch of command and control drones on the internet, connected to the internet at all times, right? Attacking a target all at the same time. So what fancy bears do, and hackers like so, is harvest a bunch of phones. And by harvest, I mean make games, make video games, make the old utilities and things like that they post for free or claim that it's like, amazing or whatever. And then people download it to their phones. After that, the phones become infected. And then those phones are constantly connected to the internet. And the reason I was commenting that once 5G becomes available, it's going to be like all shit is going to hit the fan, is because right now with 4G, your phone is still limited to how fast it is. But with 5G, when you have hundreds of thousands of compromised phones that you are in control of, and you take those phones and you point them in the direction of, pick a company, Microsoft, or pick like a smaller company like Wells Fargo.
Uber.
Let's pick Wells, like some of these companies that are not super techy.
Okay.
Right?
Any of the financial institutions.
Basically pick a financial institution. They all suck ass because they all hire shitty programmers. And anyways, that's going to make me angry, so I'm just going to backtrack to my point. So we pick Wells Fargo, right?
Right.
And you target all the traffic towards Wells Fargo, right? wellsfargo.com.
Okay.
But before you do that, of course, you do your research. So you see which is their service. You make a list of IP addresses that you want to hit. So you take down not just their website, but also their ATM system, also their bank transfer system.
Are you regionally limited? Like you have to be close to like
No.
the Wells Fargo main server or something like that?
That's the beauty of it, no.
So it's just...
And the attack, not only that, but the attacks themselves come from all over the world. You don't even have to be so...
Well, that's crazy. So somebody in Russia can be attacking a Wells Fargo server in America?
No, of course, yeah. Somebody in Russia is attacking, well, maybe not Wells Fargo, but some other server in America, right? But what I'm saying is the command... so that's where the hacker, is controlling all of these rogue phones all over the... planet, right? But the phones themselves, they're not even limited to the United States. They can be all over the planet. You can have phones in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, and they don't have to be just phones. Also, obviously, computers, right? But computers are a little bit less, like more rare now, because not as many people don't keep their computers running 24/7.
Right. Yeah.
The beauty of this is that you can have these phones. And you can have them 24/7. Not only that, but these command and control software is even clever enough where they optimize their strategy where they only do it while it's charging. So because what happens is the phone gets very hot when you do this, right? Because it starts banging out signal like that, right? That heats up the phone. So what these guys do is their software is even smart enough to where it looks for when the phone is charging, and that's when it starts to bang out those data packets out and starts attacking other your target. Because then a user picks up their phone is really hot, but they think like, oh, it's charging, no big deal.
Oh, I see.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's
right.
tricky. That's clever.
They're Like clever bastards. And they also even do things like where they spread the load. So for instance, maybe it only uses because remember, they don't need a lot of actual bandwidth from your phone. What they need is a lot of packets. So as a result, you may not see a huge spike in your data usage, but it could still be substantial. It could be like a few gigabytes, for instance, that they wasted of your data, right? But because of these amplification attacks in the NTP protocol, in the what's the other one? The DNS server, DNS protocols, the mirroring attacks. Because of that, they can take that 3 or 4 gigabytes and amplify it to like 50 gigabytes of actual traffic directed straight at
Wells
Fargo's door, or
wellsfargo.com.
Yeah, or their database servers, or their ATM systems. And it's not like this traffic has to be meaningful. By that, what I mean is, it doesn't have to be like, like actually mean anything at all.
Is there any way to stop this?
No.
Could wellsfargo.com be hosted in a different location?
It doesn't help.
Can it be like redirected to a different location?
It wouldn't help.
Because wellsfargo.com would be compromised.
Well, no, because no, they wouldn't be compromised. It's not about the server that you're hosting it on. They would just react in real time, because as soon as you move it to a different IP address or a different server, the website, the attack will simply redirect.
That sounds scary.
And because it's a denial of service attack, it's called usually they call DDoS, distributed denial of service attack. And what that means is you can't block, if it was just one IP address attacking the same server, you can just block that IP address and you're good, right? But because it's a distributed denial of service attack, these pings are coming from all over the world.
So how do you avoid getting your phone infected?
Well, just if you're on Android, download things from the official Play Store, and download things that are
from reputable companies.
Reputable companies, yeah. So if you have an Android phone and you only have in it things like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Uber, shit like that, right?
Yeah.
Like big companies, right? Gmail stuff, obviously. You should generally be okay. Generally. And also make sure to have like the latest Android updates and security updates, of course, and stuff like that. So if you have any over-the-air updates, do make sure to do those.
Does the ransomware die if you erase the app, or does it continue somehow like a zombie in the background?
Oh no, it's a zombie in the background, of course.
So if you delete the app, it doesn't help?
No.
Oh.
No, not once.
It escaped.
It depends. It depends, I should say. It depends on how good the program is. The viruses, basically. On Android, in order to escape deletion, it would have to not jailbreak, but root, basically. It would have to gain root access on the phone. But the fact of the matter is, it's not particularly difficult on especially some of the older Android phones, and by older I mean just like a year old or so, to actually do that, especially if you're doing it on a small case basis. So by that I mean if you only need root access for this one program and you're not looking to have root access for everything, basically.
Oh, this is interesting. This means that we'll never have digital voting, because if terrorists can do this, then how could you ever trust that your country's, voteinamerica.com will work if it's apt to get terrorized or hacked in this way?
Well, remember again, they're not, so these hackers, they're not hacking. Again, we're using Wells Fargo as an example as far as I know, they haven't been attacked yet. I'm just using them as an example, right? But if somebody was to attack Wells Fargo, they wouldn't actually get access to any of the data. They would just basically block the door. It's the equivalent of blocking the door.
Yeah, but if you have a system, a voting system that requires you to go to voteinamerica.com or whatever, and the website is down all the time or whatever, then no one votes.
Well, and the reason why Cloudflare was writing about it too, by the way, is uh, because they provide the mitigation services for distributed denial of service attacks, DDoSs. And the mitigation service,
what's that?
well, the mitigation service is basically just putting very, very powerful servers that can handle the onslaught.
Oh.
It's not like particularly sophisticated. It's brute force versus brute force, essentially.
Oh, wow.
Right?
So
So
that's nice.
and they do have so Cloudflare has been working. I think there were some other companies who have been working on artificial intelligence systems that would be able to in real time scan the pattern of traffic and use AI to reject some very obviously bad traffic. It's very difficult though, and you're probably gonna over reject things because it wouldn't be particular like so. That would and that does work, and Cloudflare is pretty good at doing that for reflection attacks, because there, for instance, your server is basically being hit by a bunch of UDP packets rather from NTP servers, right? And those usually come in on specific, so like for instance, specific ports, but with UDP protocol, right? UDP packets. If your website, for instance, or your database doesn't rely on UDP, you can just simply block all UDP packets and only pass in, TCP packets. UDP and TCP are a little bit different. UDP is usually used for like voice communication and things like that, and also unidirectional packets, and TCP bidirectional conversation type of packets. So maybe think of UDP more like a postcard that somebody just sends you advertising their business, and TCP is more like a correspondence back and forth with somebody, right? So you could do that. But if you have a website that relies on UDP, for instance, because you're streaming some videos from it, or maybe playing some audio from it, or maybe you have a database that relies on UDP for, I don't know, database synchronizations or some other, I don't know, UDP is a very commonly used protocol, then you're down to packet filtering on an individual level, right? And the thing here is, it doesn't seem that complicated until you understand the scale of these attacks. And the scale of these attacks, like I think one of the biggest ones was as much as 500 gigabits or gigabytes. So that's 500 gigabyte per second, I think. No, it was gigabit. So my fault. But it's 500. So that's 500 1 gigabit connections hitting your server all at the same time, right? And it's sustained.
For weeks, hours.
For weeks.
Yeah. You
can get sustained attacks. And I think my knowledge on this is probably way out of date too, because the last time I've seen what the largest attacks were, 500 gigabit rather, was pretty big. But by now, I wouldn't be surprised if they crossed into much larger, like terabits.
Are the digital terrorists very effective at collecting ransom
money? Oh yeah, they collect more than $1 billion a year, according to at least Krenz. I read this guy Krabs on Security a lot, and Brian Krabs, I think is called his name. I hope I'm not misspelling his name or missaying his name, but in any case, he says that they collect way significant. It's hard to estimate exactly, but at least more than $1 billion a year in ransom.
And it's a growing industry.
It's a growing industry. Yes.
Yeah. So, boys and girls, if you want to be in a growing industry, move to Russia and become a hacker.
Yep. Well, and then the reason why I was saying that with 5G it's going to become that much worse is because what takes maybe, I don't know, 5 to 10,000 phones on 4G right now will be possible with like 500 phones on 5G. So it's the ability for somebody to perform these kinds of attacks will basically scale with the internet connectivity speed available to the average person or the average phone, I should say.
And do these hackers go for smaller institutions, like small companies, like mid-sized companies, or for large corporations?
Yeah, usually the secret is the secret to their success is mostly that they go for smaller corporations.
AKA like unified school districts. AKA,
Yeah,
AKA little towns in America.
yeah, and they ask for not that much money.
Oh, I see.
So as a result, people are just willing to pay it.
Oh, that makes the problem even worse and more rampant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but they are doing it cleverly because they know if they ask for $1 million, people might not pay them, and it might seem a little diabolical. But they know if they ask for like $5,000, then people are more likely to pay them. And for them, $5,000 is great because they didn't spend any money.
Oh, I was gonna say, well, how much money? What's their start? Like their
Well, because
what are their fixed costs besides
the
like the labor of the people programming?
well, of course, but that's fixed cost, right?
Yeah.
So you don't really care about the fixed cost. What you're interested in is what their incremental cost.
What are their incremental costs?
Because the fixed cost is there no matter what, right?
Yeah.
But the incremental cost is the cost of attacking an individual company, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if the company pays up, then the cost of attack is zero. You don't have to do the attack,
Mm-hmm.
right? It only costs you sending that email and doing that 30-minute attack, which costs you like, I don't know, $10, right? So it actually doesn't cost you that much if people pay.
Mm-hmm.
It only costs you money if people don't pay.
Mm-hmm.
That's why maybe they're promoting the fact that people should pay.
And promoting their brand, their Fancy Bear brand.
The Fancy
So
Bear
people
brand.
remember the Fancy Bear brand demands money.
Yeah, these are the same people who also do the those file ransomware attacks.
Yeah.
Where they get like a program on your computer and then it encrypts all your files and then it demands some money in order to decrypt it.
Yeah.
And they have their own tech support. But anyways, so that was my side note of why I think 5G, while obviously not at fault for this kind of behavior, might exacerbate this problem quite substantially.
Mm. It seems like a real threat.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine if you export these Russian hackers to like India and China and maybe the Middle East and they get all these new tools? It's like, ka-ching! They'll be ruining people in the West, the life of people in the West. Or even their own populations.
Yeah. That their own population is not immune from the same kind of attacks. And the companies in Russia get attacked all the time by the same kind of hackers. So it's not just American companies.
Soon there'll be a new job like a mercenary hacker. Like somebody who is up for hire to help you deal with these terrorist attacks.
Well, see, but the problem is that because it's a brute force attack, you can only respond to it with brute force, essentially.
Mm-hmm. So bigger, more powerful servers.
Yeah. So an individual hacker is not gonna. There is no algorithm that one brilliant person can write to prevent this attack.
Okay, but they can go and consult with the company and tell them exactly what you just said. Like, you will need a new computer, a hacker-proof computer 2000. Which is a bigger and more powerful computer to deal with all that onslaught of traffic.
Well, first, if I was consulting any company on this matter, I would say that you need to really rethink why you need to have your organization as open as it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, for instance, why does anybody, why is your intranet, externally accessible? You should lock down your internal structure of your company as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's something that a lot of companies don't do very well.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing is you need to figure out whether or not your website is redundant. Is it redundant in many servers? Is it able to withstand traffic? Like, for instance, if you get on average, 1,000 visitors to your website per minute, for instance, right? Let's say you're a bigger organization, right? Can your website handle 10,000? Can it handle 20,000? If not, why not? right? Because a lot of organizations say, well, we can handle 1,000. We only get 1,000. That's good enough. And the answer is no, it's not good enough. If you can handle 1,000, or if you usually get 1,000, you should be able to handle at least 10,000, at least 10 times. Your maximum.
Surges.
Yeah, for searches.
Surges.
Yeah, I know, I mispronounced it.
My question is, does it take like 10 times more money to be able to handle the 10,000 surge? The 10,000 per minute surge versus 1,000 per minute visitors?
Yes and no. So if you are fully optimized already, then obviously yes, because then the only thing you can do is buy more equipment, right? But if you're not fully optimized, which is most of these companies aren't, right? Are you caching things properly? For instance, is your front page generated every time somebody is going to it, or is it cached? And this is the kind of things that, again, and it sounds like I'm shilling for Cloudflare. I assure you I have no relationship with them, but this is exactly the kind of stuff that they do. For instance, you put Cloudflare in front of your website, and then every time people go to your website, they in fact go to Cloudflare servers first. So that way, if a bunch of nonsense traffic starts coming into your website, they are the ones who have to deal with it. And your server doesn't even see it. And at the same time, if you have a server that has a front page that's not cached, that's generated every time live, but let's say nothing changes in it, well, Cloudflare is smart. They ping it once, they ping it twice, and then they cache it themselves, so that way it doesn't even hit your server. The only thing that hits your server is just like notifications of traffic, basically. But what's important there is, of course, you have to set it up properly. So yeah, there's going to be more business for people, certainly, who can set up better defenses against denial of service attacks. But once you cross into these mega attacks, there have been times that they've taken down Cloudflare.
Is that what happened like 1 month to 3 months ago when Cloudflare, and as a result, half of the internet was down?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were programming a project, was like 2 months ago, right?
Something like that.
And we were freaking out because nothing was working on
GitHub.
Yeah, on GitHub, right?
Yeah.
And I think we were actually trying some code, and it wasn't working either. And we were like, "What the hell? Why isn't it working?" And then we realized that all of the, I think it was,
I think Facebook was down.
I think it was Bootstrap's or Facebook's. It was either Twitter's Bootstrap or some other GS library that's very common. I think it was Facebook's GS library, but I can't remember what it was now. But it was only referenced as a CDN and a bunch of CDNs, and all the CDNs were down. Content delivery networks were down because Cloudflare was down, and that made me really scared because I realized that, and then as a result, so many other websites, big, powerful websites like MSNBC, CNN. Even Yahoo, I think, was down, and the reason for that is because all of these websites, well, they weren't down. Like, you could still get the content, except none of it looked right because some of these libraries just weren't loading. Some of these JavaScript libraries weren't loading, which sit on CDNs usually. And I was just mesmerized by how many large organizations, like CNN, for instance, large fucking organization. Amazing that they don't host their own development libraries that their code relies on, that their website relies on. 20 years ago, it would be unthinkable for you to link to somebody else's server for like a JavaScript library that was required in order to render your website. Everything that you needed from the website
was stored locally
on that website, right?
Yeah.
Except maybe advertisements or something like that. Now you go to CNBC or CNN or NBC or Yahoo, go to these websites, open up your developer console in Chrome, and just see how many IP addresses it hits. It's hundreds of domains, hundreds of IP addresses that it has to pull stuff from just to build one website. and that's that is
The interweb.
it's fragility. You read that the white fragility book. I should write the internet's fragility book, because we're making the internet more and more fragile. And I'm only making fun of that book because well, you have to finish reading it and then we'll talk about it.
Well, I did finish
Oh,
reading
yeah.
it over the weekend when I was preparing food and other things for a lunch party that we were hosting.
But I almost feel like that deserves its own
Podcast.
of hatred.
Yes,
for
but
me.
I did not hate it. I thought it was nice. I thought it was just, as a little taste of what I thought. I thought it was just sensitivity training.
Yes, but that's because. Okay, so we'll talk about it briefly. That's because Jill read it and then she tells me about it. I was like, oh, that doesn't sound so bad. But then you have to realize that, like the way she described it is like, oh, the author just wants people to be kinder and recognize that there's many different people in the world that have different styles towards their culture, and maybe don't understand how other cultures work, and it's easy to just learn about other cultures so we can all understand each other a little bit better, right? So if that was the actual message of the book, nobody would actually care about it, right? I mean, not that nobody will care about it. It's a good message. It's like, yeah, we should understand our fellow people, and we should be kind to people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So but that's not the message. The message is, or at least the way it's interpreted by the religious left, as I call them now. Just like we have the religious right, aka Trump supporters, we have the religious left, aka social justice warriors.
So people are actually talking about this book?
Of course, it's a
Really?
very common book.
Really?
Yeah,
Well,
to talk.
the way I heard about this book was because after the Black Lives Matter situation, everyone like on blogs and on Twitter, not Twitter because I don't follow Twitter, kind of blogs and podcasts were saying, hey, you guys have to get informed, and here's some books you should read. And that one came up like at the top of the list a lot of the time, and I thought, oh, maybe I should read it. It's kind of geared towards white people, and at the end it touches on like brown people, like people of color. But
I
yeah.
think it approaches it all wrong.
Why? You
Well,
haven't even read it. You should listen to it. It's only like 6 hours.
I just don't care to listen to it because I know how people are taking it. So I'm not sure. I don't.
Okay. Well,
So my objection is to the way that people are taking it. I'm not even sure. But my objection is also to the way the author talks about it, right?
Mhm.
And the way I perceive the author talking about it is not, it's nice to be kind to people, but it's more like, you do as I say or I'll kill you.
well, I guess I could understand it like
It's dictatorial.
in a way. It's sort of like you need to devalue yourself in order to make other people more valuable.
Why? That's idiotic. That's actually a really bad.
That's kind of like if I had to do a negative interpretation of that book, which I'm not going to.
Okay.
But I can see how it can be taken that way. Like in order to bring up other people, you need to bring yourself down a little bit.
But my issue is, I don't know if the book specifically, like what you just said, is exactly what's said about that book, right?
Yeah.
But it's also exactly the way I hear people who support that book talk about it.
Okay. So
is that wrong? Is that not what the author claims? The author does not claim that you must devalue yourself and you must do all these things to cure the injustice. Like the example I gave you that you quoted from the book is of a woman in class being called a girl, and she felt very offended by that because she felt like she was just a girl, a slave girl on a plantation.
She must have been a black person.
And she obviously was a black person,
and
but
she must have, had maybe stories about.
But this is a person. This is a young person in 2020, right, or 2010s, right?
Yeah.
She wasn't on a plantation. She wasn't a slave. Nobody in her immediate family was a slave or on a plantation. And the fact that her mind jumps to girl means, oh, you're just a slave, as opposed to, oh, I would like, I'm 20 years old or whatever she was at the time. I would like to be referred to by my name, or at least as a woman, right? There's nothing wrong with that. And I understand that it could be a little insulting, but to jump from that's a little insulting to this is clearly because I'm black and this is slave roots.
And you're clearly, I'm adding to what you're saying, you're clearly misinformed. And one way to handle that is saying, excuse me, please don't call me that. It triggers me, and leave it at that, right?
But why would you say it triggers me?
Or, I think it's mean, and my name is, blank. Like I said, my name is Jessica. Please refer to me by my name.
Yeah, or why even say it's mean? Why not just stop it at it's not respectful? It's not respectful to call a grown woman a girl, and if she
no, she was like a high schooler or like a middle schooler or something. It was
If she is a middle schooler, then she is a fucking girl, and I'm not going to have anybody apologize for that.
Listen, I did not listen to this book with in great detail. I was going in and out of doing my things, and it was playing in the background, and I picked up snippets here and there.
What I'm saying is, I see a lot of people who have read this book, and now they're looking for racism. And when they can't find racism, they find an excuse to manufacture racism.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying.
And I take this book as saying we should all be a little bit more sensitive to other people, but be careful not to, make people feel awkward and weird.
Okay, so that's a perfectly fine message. If people stopped there, if they stopped there and didn't keep going further, if they didn't say, oh, and if you don't do it, then we're going to make sure that you get fired. Or if you don't do it, then we're going to make sure that your life is ruined.
Okay. Well, it also allows people of color, also known as non-white people.
Why do they have to be people of color or non-white people? Why don't you say people?
Okay, it allows people to speak up when they think things are being done strangely. If I'm a blue person and I think yellow people are doing things weirdly, I'm like, oh my god, those yellow people are so weird and overly sensitive about this, and it's okay.
I'm confused.
I think this book is trying to make it okay for people who look different, I suppose, to make strange comments or awkward comments.
Okay, give me a specific
example. Criticizing, the blue people can criticize the yellow people.
Okay, forget it. Just an example from the book. Give me an example.
Like if you are, a person of color, if you're a black person and you don't want white women to cry when, for example, George Floyd died because
why? If a human being is killed in the street, it's not okay for white people to cry because racism?
Yeah, because they're drawing all the attention to themselves, and thus...
That is really fucking stupid. You don't see that as being really You're saying to this other person saying, no, your emotions you just witness a human being being murdered in the street, and your emotions right now should not take precedence over my oppression.
No, you can have your emotions, just don't have it in front of other people.
Why?
Because it might trigger them.
Why?
Because it's like, oh my god, people will come to soothe you instead of taking a look at the hard facts of life. Why did this happen? Why did we just witness what we witnessed?
Would it be okay for a black person to cry?
Presumably, yes.
Why?
Because
everybody is just what their skin color is. Do you understand that the only difference between a racist and an anti-racist is one of them calls people of color, the other one calls them colored people, but you're still intensely concentrated on somebody's skin color.
Okay. I agree. I think the author does a very poor job at pointing out that problem.
Yeah, and this is not to dismiss saying, oh, there's no racism in America, No, but when you make it about racism, when you write an entire book saying how racist America is, then all of a sudden, you have all these young people looking for racism. It's like, why don't they write a book called In Search of Racism?
Yeah.
It's like Don Quixote looking for,
So
monsters to kill.
yes, to a certain degree, I agree. This book is in search of racism instead of just normal human miscommunication or insensitivity.
Yeah, like if it wanted to just say, that black people, Mexican people, Puerto Rican people, all these people have their own, Italian people, Irish people, they have their own different cultures.
Yeah.
And those cultures,
or
idiosyncrasies. It doesn't make them bad people if they like certain things, right? If black people like certain things, it doesn't make them black people because bad people because they like certain things. If Italian people like, pasta, it doesn't make them bad people for liking pasta or anything like that, right? So we shouldn't judge people based on their skin, and we should also not assume that people will fit exactly their stereotype. What also I'm very bothered by this, all this, as I call it, the religion of the left, because I'm bothered by it because there's no room for being different. If you're a black person, you must be like this, and if you're not like that, you're a traitor to your race.
I agree.
And that just makes no sense. So if you're a black person, but you really don't care about jazz, and you really don't care about rap, and by God, you love yourself some country music, but you're a perfectly nice person otherwise, no, you're a traitor to your race.
That's weird. Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, it's not about...
I think it's not about exploring those weird, edge cases of people who are betraying their race, but it's more about exploring why white people have kind of racism and why they're afraid of black people and
okay, so let's cover that because I
customs,
actually heard
and
that.
why we want to culturally assimilate black people as opposed to embracing their culture, a little bit more of their culture. But it's a little bit nonsensical because we have embraced a little bit of black culture. We have jazz, which was we have rap, we have
jazz, rap, barbecue, soul food.
Yeah.
All these things. And see, the thing is...
And they're turning a blind eye towards those things that have...
Well, they're not. Instead, they're saying, like those girls, for instance, that were making... well, I'll give the other example. The other example of this white guy in New York who is a Mexican chef, meaning he's white, but he specializes in Mexican cuisine, and not just like, oh, here's a taco, but like actual authentic Mexican cuisine. He travels to Mexico, he researches this, and people like this, including I think even the very author of this book, say that he's culturally appropriating Mexican culture, and then he's not allowed to do so. Why? Because he's white? How is that not fucking racist?
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah. And
or like all the little kitties, or not kitties, but you cannot dress like a Chinese person if you're not Chinese. That's weird. You cannot dress like an Indian person with a sari if you are...
That's very weird. Yeah.
That's weird.
That's very weird. And that's very weird because if you think about it, if you wanted to end racism, if you wanted to end discrimination, you would want everybody to be like borrow from everybody else and mix the culture, right?
Yeah.
And then assimilate everybody into the singular culture where it's okay to wear a sari even if you're not Indian, where it's okay to cook Mexican food even if you're not Mexican, where it's okay to love white picket fences even if you're not white.
Yeah.
It's okay for everybody to do whatever is okay for humans to do. If we think it's okay for a human being to do that, it shouldn't matter what fucking skin color that human has.
Yeah.
That's my point. If the only fucking people in the world who concentrate so much on something you cannot change, meaning the race where you can't change the race you were born in, right?
Yeah. Just like you can't change the religion you're born into.
Yeah, or the religion, or the
unless you're an adult.
Well, no, but the religion you can change, of course. But the race you can't change. Your gender you can't change unless you become transgender. But then you die from all kinds of terrible things.
Related.
We'll talk about it another day because that's another topic of conversation. But the point is, you can't change your race. you should be able to do whatever is acceptable for human beings to do, regardless of the race that you are, right?
Yeah.
But the important thing you bring up is why is it, and I heard this in the book while I was passing, in passing.
What was it?
The book was saying that, most white people wouldn't consider living in a neighborhood if it was more than 30% black, right?
Yeah.
She said that statistic.
Yeah, something like you would need a gun because if there's too many people of color in that neighborhood, you would feel unsafe, and crime rates are higher, and so on and so forth.
So she even says that the crime rates are higher?
Well, no, she was quoting it, and she was even giving like an example of one of her friends said that she purchased a house for like $20,000 or $30,000 in New Orleans, but they had to get a gun, each of them, because they didn't feel very safe.
But they didn't feel very safe because it wasn't a very safe neighborhood. That's why the house was $30,000.
Yeah. Well, she was making it an issue of race.
How?
As opposed to the excitement of getting a $30,000 house.
No. But what I don't understand is, somebody says, let me put it in a different way.
So you're saying, oh, she is promoting segregation?
No, I'm not saying that. Let me ask you a different question. Is it or is it not true that the most violent neighborhoods in America happen to be black and brown, primarily black and Hispanic?
Correct. There's a lot of crime happening.
Also, Asian neighborhoods, sometimes there's some Asian gangs, right?
Yeah.
Back in 1950s, 40s, and 30s, Italian neighborhoods were sources of crime, right?
Yeah.
Then we got rid of the gangs there. Now we need to get rid of the gangs in the black neighborhood.
Yes.
Right? People don't think that black people are by nature violent. But black neighborhoods have a tendency to be poor.
Yes.
In those poor neighborhoods, there has a tendency to have a high crime rate because they have a lot of gangs. They have a lot of gangs because they have a lot of children who don't have parents.
Yep. And that's the biggest problem. That's the biggest contributor to gang problems. When you have kids left at home with no supervision, and they go off wandering in the streets.
Exactly.
And curious about what they
So
find.
then the question, and I'm not making one of these pull yourself up by the bootstraps type of arguments. I believe the government should help black families come into those
just vulnerable and fragile people in our society.
Yeah. Like Donald Trump just recently tweeted, which is again the reason I hate that man more than any person on earth at the moment, at least, is because he's an utter piece of shit. And he just recently tweeted saying how he's going to do everything in his power to block the block the bills that would allow black people, black families, to use their government-sponsored housing voucher things to move out to the suburbs. And he's like, well, if you elect Joe Biden, then goodbye suburbs. He will allow black people to live in your suburbs. That's what, when people say that Donald Trump isn't racist, I don't know how fucking non-racist, like, how can you claim that? He's a fucking piece of human garbage. Orange fucking, god damn, I hate that man. I wish he's dead. I wish he dies. And given my gypsy roots, I thereby right now curse him to die within the next 5 days. And if it happens, I hope this fucking podcast goes viral. Because fuck that person and fuck him in the next universe too.
Although we're highly unlikely to upload it in the next 5 days. Okay.
Well, that's to be decided. Anyways, the point is that, no, I think that the government should help poor, not black neighborhoods, poor neighborhoods.
Yes.
Because I don't think
fragile
it should be about
neighborhoods. Because
yes.
we should give a helping hand to people who are in vulnerable spots.
Exactly.
We are not monsters. We're not savages. We're not uncivilized.
Yeah.
We help those who ask for help and who need
That's
help.
the democratic thing. The democratic thing used to be to help poor people, to help
or people
working
with
people.
AIDS, or people who are different.
People who are different. And now what's happening is we ran out. The American public on a whole, even the stupid idiotic people who follow the Jesus Christ of Donald Trump, even those people on a whole are mostly non-racist.
Okay, so the overly privileged, overly educated white female has run out of victims to support
Basically, yes.
or to rally for.
But the problem is that there is plenty of poor people in the world. There's plenty of poor people in America. They just don't look like the victim that you want to protect. Because
There's the homeless we could be focusing
we have so many
There's
homeless, but we also have so
problem.
many black people who are struggling because
But the thing is, we cannot go in there and teach them how to improve themselves because that would be cultural assimilation.
But what's wrong with cultural assimilation? That's the part I don't understand. What's wrong? I'm nobody's gonna culturally assimilate them and saying, don't do that. Don't cook that food. Don't don't love your family. Don't go to church. Don't sing and clap in church and be happy. I want to culturally assimilate them by saying, don't shoot people.
I gotcha. But
get an education.
We've moved away from this idea that it's okay to point out people's ignorance to let's just ignore people's ignorance, Let's just ignore their ignorance and let them live however they want to live.
But that's not...
Because it's none of our business to tell them how to live.
No, but it is, because we're a country. We're a community. It's not a business to tell them that they shouldn't consume, food that we don't find particularly nice, or that they shouldn't watch movies that we don't find interesting, like White Chicks. The movie White Chicks, so any number of movies, basically anything that stars that Martin Lawrence fellow, right? I don't get black humor. I just don't get it. It's looks pretty stupid to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to not like black people because they have a humor that I don't find particularly funny.
And
right?
You should not have the right to call it demean them because
Why?
it's stupid.
Well, no, if I think it's stupid, I'm gonna say it's stupid, right? But that doesn't mean that I think that they are stupid. I think their humor is stupid, right?
Yeah.
But that's just what they like, and that's okay. They can like it. I'm not saying we should culturally assimilate black people and say, look, no, you all have to watch the same movies we watch. No. But that's not even the fact. I mean, black people are weird? No, they go to the same movies. They like the same shit.
They shop at the same Walmart that you shop at.
Yeah, they have their own little things that they like that. I love that movie Dynamite, by the way. And then black people love that movie. I'm like, okay, it's kind of funny. If that's what you guys like, you can watch. I'm not going to stop you. If you want to listen to rap, no problem. Just don't kill people.
Yeah.
Right? It's okay to tell people not to kill other people. It's okay to tell people that if you want to succeed in the culture in the society that we built up, here's some guiding rules that you might try. Like, for instance, finishing your education, saving up money, going to work. There's a bunch of things, and I'm not saying those things are easy.
Being concerned about your intellect much more so than your superficial appearance or what others perceive you as.
Yeah.
Because there's this overly like what's it called? What am I trying to say? There's this overly consuming desire to display wealth.
Yeah.
When you do not have wealth.
And that's true not just for I think that's true for pretty much any poor person who grows up in these poor neighborhoods. I don't think that's in any way unique to black or Hispanic people or anything like that. You have a bunch of white people who are also obsessed with displaying their wealth. That's why they drive those stupid lifted pickup trucks with shitty exhausts and stuff. Everybody displays their wealth in different ways. That's all it is. Yeah. For black people, it might be huge rims on their cars and
gold chains,
gold inserts on their teeth. For white people, it might be an extra snowmobile, a new gun rack, and a lifted pickup truck. But it's the same. So like when you're saying don't homogenize that culture. I want to homogenize the white culture too. I want to get those assholes to stop driving diesel trucks that throw particulates in the air, right? There's no problem with diesel trucks, but when you remove all the safeties and you just shoot black smoke up in the air, you can go fuck yourself.
You know what it's all looking like? What this is looking like to me? It looks like we've lost values,
Yeah.
like community values.
Absolutely.
We've become overly concerned with consumption, that we've given up family values, values of contribution, values of, actually caring about our communities. And
Yeah.
all for like a cheap display of wealth.
Yeah. I think that's so too. But anyways, how do we fix it though? And I think the solution isn't the one that's offered in this book. I don't think the solution is to
And it's certainly not Donald Trump, who can't take
fuck
responsibility
no.
for
Yeah.
any of his actions.
Yeah.
I think that's another issue with
Oh, that's my main issue with him, for sure.
vulnerable neighborhoods and communities. There's this lack of taking responsibility for what's happening.
That is true.
For what's happening in their lives, for what's happening around their neighborhoods, because it's not any individual's fault. It's like it's always it's that guy.
Yeah, it's always passing down the road the blame and everything. That's why I think it's such a good idea. This is why I think Donald Trump is such a fucking piece of shit. It's such a good idea to take poor neighborhoods, whether they be white or black or what have you, and spread them out so we have this dispersion. So you have, here's some poor people who live here, and here's some middle class people, and here's some richer people, and it's all intermixed so they can all at least see each other. Like, I want every single child growing up in a poor family to be able to come out on his porch, look out, or his door or whatever, or his apartment window, and look out and see houses of people who are doing better than he is. Not to make that child feel bad about where he is, but to give him an idea of how it could be.
Yeah.
Right? To give him a thought process that, yeah, my family is not as well off as those people over there.
Mm-hmm.
But I can see those people. I live in the same neighborhood with those people. I go to the same school as those people. I can learn from them. And my life can be better.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
You want that from your society. That's the whole point of society. It's like in Finnish schools where they take the best children,
mm-hmm.
the smartest children, and they pair them with the children who are struggling the most,
mm-hmm.
because their thought process is like, we're going to have the smartest children tutor the children who are not doing so well, so we can bring up the average. We can make all of our society smarter,
mm-hmm.
right? And it works really well. Why don't we do something like that here in the United States? Why don't we place families that are poor, allow them to rent in slightly better... No, I'm not saying like, poor people should be able to rent in Malibu or something like that, right? And for like $10,000 a month or something like that. But
mm-hmm.
I'm just saying, can't we take some of those people from Detroit? Can't we help them relocate themselves if they want voluntarily? I'm not saying come in and just drag them out.
Yeah.
Voluntarily. Help them relocate into some of the suburbs so they can have some better role models around them.
Right.
Then have some hipsters and some other people move into those neighborhoods as they empty out, just to, again, better role models. Basically, if you think about it, in America, we have losers and we have winners. The poor people are the losers. The winners are the people who are doing better, right?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be nicer if we have the losers learn from the winners so we can just have more winners in our country? So we're just, as an average, we're just better? Wouldn't it be nicer for everybody if we didn't have poor people? If we just had people who are like, pretty well off and marginally well off.
Meaning, like, we were more like the Scandinavian countries, more socialists. We need to, basically, what you're advocating for is more socialism.
But not in the,
But not bringing the people who are up.
Not the dictatorial, though, socialism. The help people socially, like the people in your community. Help people in your community, and don't assume.
It's funny because most people think of socialism and they think of authoritarianism.
That's the problem.
And that's.
I don't want that kind of socialism.
I was going to ask you. Well, we have excellent examples of socialism in Scandinavia. We can look at Denmark, Germany, Sweden.
Germany is not even Scandinavia, but Germany, France. Well, France is kind of iffy. But Germany is a good example of a socialism that works. People say, "Oh, Germany, that's not socialism." Yeah, Okay, it's about as much socialism as I want. But why does it happen? It happens because they have a nice integrated culture that identifies all the people as Germans.
Well, sometimes they have skirmishes with their Turkish,
Yeah, but
like
that's
a
why their culture is
minority.
becoming a little bit fractured, right?
Yeah,
And because there's a bunch of assholes also in Germany, a bunch of German SJW
Nazis.
assholes. That is, well, there's a bunch of Nazis there who are screaming "fuck the Turkish people," and
Yeah,
then there's also a bunch of SJWs who are screaming, "Don't you dare question anything they do."
yeah,
Even if the Turkish people are going around attacking women who are wearing skimpy clothes,
yeah.
or just violating general German norms. In
Mhm.
my opinion about that, with all the Muslims coming into to Europe,
Mhm.
right? I have no problem with refugees
Mhm.
coming in, but it's just kind of like people coming into your house, right? If in your house the culture is that you don't wear shoes, somebody who's coming into your house as a guest doesn't get to tell you that it's in their culture not to take off their shoes,
Mhm.
right? If
Yeah.
you're a guest, you do as the guest, as the host country tells you to,
Right.
right? It's one thing if they wanted to have the all of their refugees follow one set of rules and then have a more lax set of rules for like their own people, but no. If everybody gets to follow the same rules, everybody gets to follow those same rules.
Mhm.
You don't get to tell people, "Oh yeah, we actually kind of sort of you know, will allow you to rape a white women just because it's in your culture to be offended by that."
Yeah.
And that's why I don't like that's the other reason I don't like this SJW movement is I don't know what this unholy alliance is between Islam and the left. Why are we all of a sudden protecting Islam and defending Islam?
I have no idea.
Why is it?
I think it's like this idea of like we have to protect other people's ignorance. Like as a SJW. It's okay to protect other people's ignorance because that's the way they do things.
But if we're
And even if it's not kosher, it's still part of their culture and we're not going to mess up their culture because we've messed up other people's culture as it is. So we're going to have a lot of white guilt and not tell anyone what to do.
But what about the values that people pretend that they believe in, like equal rights for women? Islam literally forbids that. What about the values of equal rights for gay people? Islam executes gay people.
Yeah.
What about the rights for equal rights for trans people? Well, there's plenty of trans people in Iran. You know why? Because in Iran, it's illegal to be gay, but it's perfectly legal to convert yourself to a woman and then be gay that way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess our SJWs need to do a little bit more soul searching.
No, they don't need to do soul searching. They need to shut the fuck up. It's overprivileged assholes who finish degrees and then realize that their degrees are worthless, and now they're justifying their existence by terrorizing the rest of the country and giving us Donald Trump. You know why I hate SJW so much? They gave us that orange asshole. If it wasn't for them, he wouldn't have been elected.
Because they're too radical.
Yeah, they're too radical to the left, and now you have a bunch of assholes too radical to the right. I mean, Trump is the king of assholes, and SJWs are the kings of whiny people.
Mm-hmm.
The Black Lives Matter movement is just like being infiltrated by them.
Perhaps SJWs will mature in the next 10 years and things will get better. Because a lot of these observations also come from,
It didn't happen in the Soviet Union. Instead, they had a revolution and a fucking pogrom, and then next thing you know, the whole fucking country was, had their.
Well, those Soviets are hardy, passionate people.
Yeah, but they're already talking in the academia that they want to defund science because it's white people science, and we need some more black people science.
Well, I don't know if that's true.
What do you mean you don't know if that's true?
Who wants to defund science? All SJWs, or is it just one instance?
No, it's actually a trending topic right now in academia where these
like defunding the police was a trending topic.
Like defunding the police was a trending topic in what way?
Like a couple weeks ago.
No, but they're still doing it. They have defunded several police departments and they're still progressing along that idiotic path. It just doesn't happen overnight.
What are they going to replace it with?
I'm sorry. Let me just pause it for a second. You see, like in the news media, these stories they burn out really quickly because we have such an incredibly insane, news cycle at the moment, right? But in reality, these things that keep going. Remember then just a few years ago, or like 10 years ago, even people were saying that this is happening in academia. And everybody's like, yeah, sure, but they're crazy there in those lunatic Ivy League schools. And then it got to like University of Phoenix Online. And then it got to local offices.
That's pretty serious.
And then it got everywhere. And then now we're suspending USC professors or whatever the fuck that professor was for saying nigga, 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 because that's the way you say, I'm thinking in Chinese, or that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And, it would be completely appropriate if he would just started saying that randomly in the middle of math class, but he was actually teaching us a communications class, business communications class, and he was teaching it on China.
Mm-hmm. When did you learn to say China the Trump way?
I don't know. While practicing it while talking to my best friend. China. God, I hate that fucking asshole.
Anyways, we should get up and get off our soapbox.
Okay, so I haven't actually read the book, so maybe I'll give it a chance. I really dislike the author, but maybe the book is not as insane, because I do know that people overblow things, but I also do know that there are some real consequences, and then people suffering those consequences.
Yeah, I'm going to be kind of diplomatic about it, and I'm going to say that her overwhelming message is just, let's be more sensitive and let's communicate better.
But again, if that was her message, I don't think I would have a problem with it.
Yeah.
So why do I have a problem with it? Why? Okay, let me put it this way.
I know there are some spicy things in there that is not for everyone, but
what I'm saying is, if it's not, if it is, if her message was limited to that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think anybody else would have a problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think her book would be very popular.
Mm-hmm.
So instead, what her book is incendiary. Incendiary. Mm-hmm. It makes people. It actually undermines racism. Like her fight against racism. If you really care about people, if you really want to.
Yeah, I totally agree. We should be skin colorblind or colorblind or whatever, right?
Yeah. Well, we should be colorblind in not.
But at the same time, we shouldn't be subversively racist, like where we avoid people who are different than us. But I think human beings as a whole tend to want to be with their own kind.
Okay, let me ask you this way. This question. If you go to a neighborhood full of black people, would you be uncomfortable?
It depends. If they're all like the Prince of Bel-Air neighborhood.
No,
like,
it's a south side of Chicago black people neighborhood.
Then it would be a little sketchy.
If you went to
Although I don't have the privilege to say that because I'm not a white female.
Why not?
Because I
would you personally go in the afternoon or at nighttime
actually as a child. Trying out the public transit system, I ended up in a black neighborhood in like 8 o'clock or like 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, and it was like scary.
Okay, but yes.
in San Diego.
But not just scary. I'm talking about
but it's not like I could see people like standing in their doorways giving me the evil eye.
Well, I can tell you that the one time I drove into south side of Chicago, the south side of Los Angeles. Neighborhood by accident, because I was taking the GPS took me in the wrong place. I drove in there, drove off the freeway, and before I was able to get back on the freeway, behind my car, I saw men chase another man with a gun and shoot at him repeatedly.
Seriously?
And then I got back on the freeway and I drove to the place where I wanted to go, which was far away from that, and MapQuest directions, but this is like back in the day, were terrible, right?
Yeah.
And this is like in 2003, 4, something like that.
That seems spectacular.
Yeah.
And quite shocking, I would say.
Well,
like,
I mean,
as a person
even at that point, I was more or less like, that's about right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they weren't shooting at me.
Mhm.
I had no involvement there.
Yeah.
But the point is, I had a friend called Nick. He had he was him and his cousin were robbed in south side of Chicago by black people who literally pulled them out of the car and stole all the wheels from their car. I don't know why they stole the wheels, because they could have stolen the entire car, but instead they just stole the wheels.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I seriously have very okay. When we were I don't know, maybe.
But hold on, I'm sorry. You can tell the story, but I was just gonna say, like, the point that I was trying to make, right, is would you be uncomfortable or concerned about being in an all black neighborhood? And the answer is, you're trying to dance around it, but the answer is yes. But
I would not be uncomfortable because if
because
it were
you're trying to be progressive.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
if
yeah.
you...
Because I had a neighbor, like, we lived in, when my mom was pregnant with my little brother, we lived in an apartment complex where there were a number of black people, and the managers of that apartment were black, was a black couple.
But you don't understand. I'm not saying that black people are bad.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, would you be uncomfortable in a black neighborhood? Could you just honestly answer the question?
Yes.
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 If you went to an all Indian neighborhood,
I would be uncomfortable too.
would you be equally uncomfortable?
I would probably be
Would you be
uncomfortable.
equally concerned for your safety?
Yes, I would.
Why?
Because Indian people have been known to rape women in a very savage way.
In America.
Well, no, in India.
Yeah, in America. If you went to a little India, in an Indian neighborhood, would you be concerned for your safety in America?
I don't know. I may be racist, and yes, I wouldn't want to go to those places where I'm the odd one out.
Okay, but would you be concerned that you will get held up or shot?
Actually, well, as somebody who has no sense of self-preservation, probably not.
Okay.
So I'm the wrong person to ask.
No, you're a wrong person to ask, because
Yeah.
you know what I'm trying to get to and you're trying not to get there. What I'm trying to do is
You're
I'm trying
to say, oh, you would feel comfortable in like a whole, like an Indian market. You would feel comfortable in a Chinese market. You would feel comfortable in a Arabic market.
Yeah.
You know, but you wouldn't feel comfortable in a black market.
No, you would feel comfortable in a black market. I'm talking about, would you feel comfortable in a black neighborhood versus a Chinese neighborhood versus an Indian neighborhood versus a Pakistani neighborhood versus an Iranian neighborhood versus an Arab neighborhood? Would you? And my point
And
is,
I'm trying to
all
say,
those people are brown, and you're not afraid of them.
I'm not.
Because statistically speaking, they don't commit that much violent crime by comparison to black people.
Right. And it's also because I feel like, as a brown person, I'm not as, I don't stand out as much as a white
Okay,
person.
I don't care about you then. I'm just going to make my own statements. I wouldn't feel comfortable going at night to a black neighborhood. Why? Because statistically speaking, if somebody in that city is going to get shot that day, more likely than not, it's going to be somebody in that neighborhood.
Yes.
Same time, I would feel perfectly comfortable going to an Indian neighborhood at night, because statistically speaking, I know that if there is a shooting in that city at night, more likely than not, it's not going to happen in that Indian neighborhood or in a Pakistani neighborhood or in a white neighborhood. Why? Why is that the case?
Because
Why?
those people don't commit as many violent or gun crimes.
They don't commit as much violence.
I mean, maybe violence is there, like domestic violence. And
okay, so now you're still looking for an excuses. And I'm still pointing out that black people commit more crime. Why do they commit more crime? Because they're poor. Why are they poor? Because the only role models that they have in their town or in a neighborhood are role models who made money by committing crime. So as a result, they think, oh, the only way I can make money is by committing crime. So I'm
Right.
going to commit crime. In an Indian neighborhood, you're going to have ex-doctors, ex-lawyers, maybe from the previous country who are working
Gotcha.
up. The people have role models. They know that there is ways to get ahead of life other than committing crime. They also have values. They have different values. They have different cultures. They have parents. They have fathers and they have mothers who care about them, who tell them, don't commit crime because we can't afford to, get you a lawyer. And this is all, you can find a million different exceptions to this, a million different exceptions. But the fact of the matter is, statistically speaking, black neighborhoods are very dangerous. Statistically speaking, black neighborhoods are very dangerous for black people who live in black neighborhoods.
I agree.
So what I'm saying is, you can't.
You need to give them better role models, but you begin by giving them better values.
Yeah, but you also can't say that white people are racist for being afraid to go into black neighborhoods if most of the crime that happens there.
Yeah.
You can't say that somebody's racist because they're simply statistically literate.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Instead, you need to address the cause. Let me put it this way. If 10 years from now.
But we are, as a nation, very divided about what to do with people who are poor.
Yes, I understand that.
Like
But
the left and the right will have different ideas. For example, even the left might be willing to give more aid, like monetary aid, but maybe they would enclose them in a pen.
No, that only makes the problem worse, though. You don't want to do that. That's bad. You want these people to be integrated in our society in a way that they can feel like they're Americans, not African Americans, not, some kind of lesser American. They're Americans.
But to justify these expenditures, we should be doing sociological studies about and following different families with similar circumstances growing up in different locations.
Why? We know it works. We know when you give people a reason to live and a good environment, they thrive. Black people aren't stupid. They aren't retarded. They're not incapable of growth and learning. We know that because we know that black people who come from Africa do very well in America. Nigerian immigrants, South African immigrants, they do very well here in America. Why? Because they integrate themselves into America. They don't come to America to be a ghetto black person. They come to America to be a white person in America, right? But
Right.
I'm saying it in quotes, white person. They just trying
like
to
a normal person.
Yeah, they're trying to be American.
Yeah.
And as a result, they succeed.
Yeah.
What if we convinced people in the inner city, what if we convinced black people who were born here that what they really, really want is to become American? To join America, to not stay in their neighborhood, to see more of the world, to see more of America. This is why we had family over, and it pissed me off so much talking to one of your family members who was like, "No, I'm not interested in traveling anywhere. I was born here and I'm going to die here."
That's an incorrect statement because they're not interested in living
anywhere else.
Yeah. But they are interested in traveling.
No, but somebody but somebody who says to me, I am not interested in living anywhere else, and that's so the difference is saying, oh, at the moment I'm not interested in living anywhere else. I haven't seen anything better. Versus, oh no matter what I see, no matter what I do, I will never want to live anywhere except here.
I think you're misinterpreting that, but maybe
that was literally the statement.
I understand, but maybe that person. There are some people who say things in absolute, but they don't really mean it.
I know they don't really mean it, but that shows you how their mind works.
Yeah, that's true. They just haven't seen something or experienced circumstances that makes them move to a different location.
Obviously.
So, yes, you're right. It does show that they are very closed-minded.
Exactly.
In that regard.
Obviously, I don't care where they live, so
yeah.
I don't care one bit. What I care about is the closed-mindedness.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. It really frustrates me in these kinds of books.
But you have to understand, Jack, that in my family we grew up very sheltered and very narrow-minded and closed-minded about things, and that's a result of having grown up religious, first of all, and second of all, in a single family, like a single parent household. Where what we wanted most of all was stability.
Well,
and
yeah,
maybe,
but I don't.
and maybe that
I don't
and
care
there's
about
like
your
a whole
family, though.
psychological root that caused people
No, I get that.
to anchor themselves to some sort of like place.
I get that, and I'm not. I really don't really care to because we're talking about like that's family issues. Family issues. We're talking about like what's true in America.
Yeah,
like,
yeah. How to help fragile and vulnerable communities in America.
Yeah, and you don't help them by denying the fact that they are more violent than other communities.
Or making yourself the victim of this, or like I guess Robin Diangelo, the author of that book, tried to say, well, you need to take responsibility for what's happening, and as a white person, you have to give more power to the black person.
How?
By basically lowering yourself and
Why?
bringing them up.
Why not just bring them up? Why not?
Well,
pull
because
them
they
up?
have probably really not that many great ideas on how to pull them up without.
So then, so that's
addressing
stupidity.
addressing the problem head on. What is the problem? Why are black people, poor? Is it because black people are given less opportunities? Is it because black people are growing up in single family households? What is it?
It's very clearly,
and then nobody
not racist related. It's very clearly,
and they haven't hit the nail on the head. They haven't said, oh, it looks like they don't have very strong role models. And of course they have these athletes, these fancy athletes, these
but they're shitty role
fancy
models.
entertainers.
But they're shitty role models.
But
that's the thing. Those people are shitty role models, right?
But
no, but
not only are they. Well, I don't necessarily agree. They're very talented and creative in their own right, or whatever.
No, but they're shitty role models in the sense that you don't want to, unless you are that talented, you don't want to act like they do. You're not going to succeed.
Right. Like it's
like these people are only tolerated due to their talent. Like Michael Jordan is a fucking asshole.
Is he?
Yeah. So as many other people. The only reason we tolerate, Kobe Bryant was a fucking asshole. All these people are not great people.
Really? Well, I don't know them personally.
You don't.
I don't follow famous people.
They're not great people. They're just great athletes, and we overlook their. I mean, okay, fine. I don't know that much about Kobe Bryant. Michael Jordan is a competitive asshole. Apparently, maybe he's not a terrible person like to know if you're not competing with him or something like that. But that's not the point. The point is that these people, they don't. Michael Jordan hasn't cured cancer. None of these people have done anything. They dribbled the ball and threw it into a basket, right?
You underestimate the value of entertainment.
I'm not underestimating the value of entertainment. I'm underestimating their contribution to society. I think that's very low.
Entertainment is some contribution to society.
It's some contribution to society, but I think it's very low. I think they contributed less to society than the guy who invented the stoplight.
That's personal to you, okay? But you're right.
You seriously think that the guy who
fine.
You're so eager to defend these people.
Okay, got it. The stoplight is a pretty...
They're no better than monkeys throwing a fucking ball into a basket. And by the way, the guy who invented the fucking traffic control lights was a black guy. Why don't we know about him? Why aren't little black kids see him as the guy who's going to help, like as a role model? Why is it that the only way you can get out of the ghetto if you're a black person is by either rapping or throwing a ball into a basket? How the fuck do we end up in a situation that poor little black kids, when they growing up, say to themselves, you know what, I'm going to be a fucking fucktard because I can't throw a basket into a ball into a basket, and I also can't rap. So I guess I have to be a drug dealer because that's the only two choices that the fucking media gave me.
That's hilarious.
No, but it's the reality.
Well, I also think that those sort of role models are so out of tune with reality, like so far away,
out of reach,
that you can't really relate to them at all.
Exactly,
because they had such extraordinary life circumstances that ordinary people are.
Yeah, like what is Michael Jordan gonna teach you about passing a history test? What is Michael Jordan gonna teach you about getting into a good college? What is Michael Jordan gonna teach you about working hard at your job?
Well, like, the thing with athletes, maybe just like military people, is that they have incredible discipline.
They do.
And whether they're gifted genetically or not, they also have incredible work ethic. But maybe And that's something you can learn from them.
That again, you're fishing for these minute slivers of redemption for these people. No, give up. Don't fight for a little sliver. Michael Jordan is a shitty role model. So is Kobe Bryant. So is Snoop Dogg. So is all these other rappers. They're terrible role models. I'm going to say it over and over again. They're terrible role models.
So what do you want them to have? Do you want them to have like a Neil deGrasse Tyson?
Yes.
Like next door neighbor.
Well, if he wasn't crazy, yes.
A next door neighbor who says, "Oh, look, it's Mars in the sky.
Yeah.
Mars is X, Y, and Z.
Oh, look, little, Johnny or Billy or whatever, Brian. Brian's a good black name. Here's Mars, or here's how to use a telescope, or here, let me show you how this car works. And that guy, Rich from Rich's Garage on YouTube, is a black guy. He's a mechanic. He teaches people how to fix cars. I watch him all the time. You don't get the sense from him that he's black. He's just a cool dude who repairs things. Like, we need to get away from this concept where it's like, no, I need a black role model. Why can't a little black kid have a white guy as his role model, or an Asian fellow as why can't a little black kid have Bruce Lee as his role model?
That's
why
true.
are we locking into this
That's
whole
true.
thing? It's so disgusting to me.
I am totally a weird individual, but growing up and watching those Disney movies, I never, imagined myself as, look, those people are white and I'm this color, therefore I can't have I can't be like those people. I don't need a brown, princess in order to feel like, I can be a princess too.
That's not to say that we shouldn't make the princess who's supposed to be in fucking Arabia brown, because,
yeah.
What other color would she be?
Yeah.
She's in fucking Arabia, in the Middle East.
But there's also some creative license that you can give to people.
If you're making a movie about the Middle East, make the fucking princess look Middle Eastern.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's my point. But outside of that, I mean, it should be, if you're making a movie about like a Chinese princess, make her Chinese.
Yeah.
Don't make her like the original. We watched the original Mulan, and then we watched the new Mulan, and then we watched the original Mulan. Do you want to touch on Mulan for a second? We liked the new Mulan.
Yeah, of course it had a few shortcomings.
We didn't like the directing.
We didn't like the directing. Yeah, some of the angles of the shots were
angles in
weird,
the editing,
and some of the cuts were too abrupt.
And too just bad storytelling.
Bad continuity.
Yeah, good story.
Yeah,
but bad telling of that story.
It was well adapted. It was almost like a story that could stand on its own. It didn't track scene by scene to the animated.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was almost pretty different, I would say.
Yeah, but it was decent.
It was good at representing the Chinese culture too of that time. I think it was both culturally and historically.
It's Disney. Disney's never very.
It's closer. It's closer than average, I would say. But then we watched the original Mulan, which I also really liked. But all the characters there look Native American, or actually they don't like it, Indians. They looked like Indians, or they didn't look Chinese.
And they look a little. I thought they looked a little more Japanesey. Like a little bit more northern.
They look like squinty Indians.
They look a little bit more northern Asian.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. But in any case, that's to me that was more or less just animators of the time.
Right.
You drawing it from memory. Maybe,
and that's the aesthetic they went for.
Yeah, and then chances are they probably, because I know Disney in general, a lot of these studios, what they do is they will hire actors, professional actors, and actually shoot the scenes, fully acted out, no music and stuff like that, but fully acted out the scenes, and then they would use those as reference for the animators to draw the characters and to draw them different motions and stuff like that. So especially fighting scenes that it's very useful for. And chances are they probably couldn't find a lot of like Asian actors, so they probably hired a bunch of like white guys and a bunch of Indian maybe actors. Again,
Native
the feather
American.
Indians. They don't like it. Native Americans don't want to be called Native Americans. They want to be called Indians. I'm going to call them Indians. And the
Okay.
Indians from India, I don't know. They should make up a different name.
Hindus.
Hindus. There you go. The Hindu Indians versus the Dati or the feather Indians.
Yeah.
But in any case, I don't know. Why did we talk about Milan? Oh, role models. Like, yeah, you like. I don't think black kids need black role models. It would be nice if they had them, but
Yeah,
any kind of
it
good
would
role
be
model would be
easier
good.
to, see somebody who's like, oh, this little person came from my neighborhood or a neighborhood similar to mine.
Yeah, and now he's a scientist, or
Yeah.
now he's a mechanic, or now he's a welder, an
Or a
engineer, or a
doctor,
doctor,
or
or
something like that.
we have so many jobs though in this country. A developer, any number
A
of things.
ballerina,
Uh,
a professional ballerina,
yeah,
another athlete.
a professional. I mean, there's no problem with professional ballerinas, but that's just like such a.
A professional, like, physical trainer.
You don't want too many. Yeah, professional physical trainer, or like
Apparently,
our doctor, for instance. We have a black doctor. He's a great doctor. I don't think of him as the black doctor. I think of him as our doctor.
yeah, a firefighter.
Yeah, and he used to be a firefighter.
Yeah, or a policeman.
Yeah, more. If you want less black people being assaulted by policemen, more black people should become policemen.
I'm not sure that's a good idea, but okay.
Why?
Sometimes people are racist against their own people.
They are, and
it's a problem,
and that is a problem.
and you have to screen for that.
Yeah,
because you get a lot of those people like falling below the radar.
It's like not the people who want to fix the neighborhood, but the people who just want to boss everybody around in the neighborhood.
Yeah,
That's a common problem. Yeah,
or people who think themselves better than the race
exactly.
that they come from.
Exactly. So you don't want too much of that, but at the same time, there's nothing wrong with black people standing up in their communities and saying, "Hey, this is wrong. This is bullshit. Like we shouldn't be shooting each other so much. We shouldn't have this, And the left.
But maybe it's to do with the fact that maybe in black culture there's also a lack of confrontation. You don't want to tell people, you don't want to confront people.
No, they're actually far more confrontational.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're very open and loud people. I mean, not to sound, it's just a fact. Black people tend to be more confrontational than white people.
Oh, interesting.
Not
so they're not willing to spare other people's feelings. They're just willing to talk their mind.
The spare the people's feeling. I don't think on average black people are mean or anything like that.
Yeah.
They're kind of like
more direct.
Like Soviet people are. Like,
oh my God, Soviet people! Don't get me started. They're so fucking direct.
Well, I think that's maybe like that. Like maybe I'm just more used to that.
Oh. Okay. I have no comment. I'm just saying.
I'm not saying it as a negative. They're more direct, and I think it's a positive actually. But they are more direct in the culture.
It's hard because Americans, if you've noticed, are not direct at all.
Not at all. Yes.
We kind of like beating around the bush a little before,
We actually had a funny moment, kind of funny and infuriating, a couple of weeks ago, where.
Oh, please tell me.
Well, that the moment.
Don't even remember it, but go ahead.
No, the moment with we went out, took our car to an inspection, and the guy failed it for bullshit reason.
Right.
And I got really pissed about that. Yeah. And then his reaction was like, I never seen anybody get so mad just because I don't perform my job well. And he didn't actually say that. He's like, I never seen anybody get so mad. I'm like, really? I'm not even mad yet, dude. It's kind of hilarious. Like people, like I find that there's a lot of, like there's certain people in this country who are users, and they get really surprised when somebody stands up to them.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like people who used to be bullies in high school, and then now they're like running a smog shop in case of this guy. And then somebody comes in and says, "Hey, you did your job wrong. I want you to do it again, and I want to see you do it." And their response is like, "Oh wow, I never had anybody demand, anything from me like that."
He did have a bad attitude.
Yeah.
Because I did call him over the phone, and what he did was like, "Oh my God, it's you again. What the fuck do you want?"
Yeah. Anyways, it doesn't matter. My overarching point was that white people in America do tend to be a little bit non-confrontational, and as a result, there's a lot of people like Donald Trump who take advantage of that, and a lot of people in general who are just assholes. And this is why we have this culture of like assholes, and we always say, "Oh, that person is an asshole," but yet they still get away with it, and yet they still progress up, and then that doesn't happen so much in black neighborhoods because they're far more direct people, and with black people because they're far more likely to say, "Hey, you're being a fucking asshole," or I'm get
I'm
the
not.
fuck out of
Yeah,
here.
I'm not having any of this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
whereas white people might just avoid the confrontation, right?
Right.
And I don't think that's a negative on their side. That's a positive. That's a positive. I think I come from the kind of people who.
Oh, so you're all about giving direct feedback.
Yeah.
Listen, dude, you're doing your job all wrong. Let me tell you how to do it. Don't you think that could rub people the wrong way?
Well, the difference is that if it doesn't involve me, he can be doing whatever the fuck he wants. But if it involves me, and it means either he bends down, it's all explain the situation.
Maybe this is why we have so many lawyers in this country. Because we're not willing to tell people directly right in their
So instead,
faces.
we hire a lawyer to tell another person
yeah.
to fuck off.
Yes,
Yeah,
maybe.
Maybe that's the thing. Just to explain the situation really quickly, what happened there is we took a car in
for a smog check.
For a smog check, our car has a catalytic converter that's been replaced about 10 years ago. We keep our cars forever. Our car is about to hit 300,000 miles, and we're going to drive it until it hits 5.
A point Jack is exceptionally proud about.
Because we are an actual environmentalist, not the, sit around and jerk off to Tesla pictures environmentalist. In any case, so a catalytic converter is fully registered in California. It has to have fancy California numbers on it, right? But we also live off road, so shit gets dirty, and our catalytic converter was a little dirty. It was covered in like dirt and grime from road and from the dirt splashing up on it and kind of caking on into the thing. When they do smog checks here in California, they have to verify that you have those numbers on your catalytic converter.
Mm-hmm.
This dude comes in, says, "Oh, I failed your car failed. I couldn't find the numbers." I'm like, "What do you mean? I know that this is a legal catalytic converter. I know it has those numbers in it. I personally never bothered to look for them because,
it's not my job.
Well, it's not my job, and also I didn't. The law that came into effect to look for those numbers, that it wasn't even a thing. Like when we installed the catalytic converter, it only became like a thing now.
Right.
But in any case, the guy's like, "Oh yeah, they're definitely not there," and then he looks at me like as if it's definitely a counterfeit.
And we proceed to tell him, well, we've done a smog check at this very place, some years ago, and you passed,
4 years ago,
and you passed our vehicle, and it still has the same catalytic converter.
Yeah. Well, of course he doesn't have to believe us and all this other stuff. But the point, to make the point to the story shorter, we went home. I grabbed on a hunch before giving up and paying $500 to replace the cat. I grabbed those scrubbies. What are they, Scotch-Brite or?
Yeah, Scotch-Brite.
Scrubbies. Wiped down the numbers for like 30 seconds, 40 seconds, a minute maybe.
Okay, a minute or two.
A minute or two. Well, no, but see, the thing is, he just has to read them. I was scrubbing the fuck out of them so I can take a picture of it and so I can have a picture of it, right? I could have read it after like 10 seconds.
Oh, I see.
Okay. The numbers. It took me a really long time to get it so it would come out on camera, right?
Yeah.
So after I would estimate maybe 30 seconds of light scrubbing, I could easily see that there are numbers there, right?
Right.
At the very least, the guy could have said, "Hey, I can't pass your car. I can't read the numbers. Go home, clean it up, come back. I'll pass your car," right?
Yeah.
He could have said that.
But instead, he justified himself and said, "In California, we first do smog, emissions test, and then we do a visual inspection. It would be illegal otherwise if I did a visual inspection first."
Which is not true, and as we found out, is actually the exact opposite of what the truth is. In any case, so the guy was a piece of shit, and
And at every step of the way, he tried to justify himself instead of taking responsibility for
no.
any of it.
Oh, and I love it that we ended the confrontation with me saying, "So, are you going to admit that you were wrong?" And his answer was like, "It's a free country. I have to admit nothing."
Yeah.
Yep. That's the kind of bullshit. Just
He gave us our money back.
he did give us some money. I don't care about the money. What the $45 isn't that
Like
50?
it was like $65.
Whatever. I don't give a fuck about the $65.
He just generally had a bad attitude. Also, when I went in, like before actually doing the smog check, I asked him, "Hey, how much is the smog check?" He said 75. I have the only dyno in town, so you probably have to do it with me unless you want to go down further.
Which was also a lie.
Yes, that's true.
Yep. And we went to another place and they did it and no problems. And the guy was actually surprised that we had any problems in any other place.
Anyways, that's to tell you that smog check people are
bastards.
Really weird. Just like gun store people.
Gun store people are fucking the
worst.
Oh
my god.
But in any case, going back to the but to finish up the non-confrontational stuff, I was going to say that, of course, me being me, I immediately reported the guy to the state authority that is regulating his business. And I had a conversation with a guy named Rudy who called me, who definitely didn't want to put anything in writing from the state, but he was really, really surprised that I wasn't able to accept the fact that the guy that he talked to the owner of the smog check place, and the smog check place owner said blah blah blah, and I got my money back, so why am I concerned? And I respond to Mr. Rudy, he didn't give me his last name, that I'm not going to leave it this way, and that I want to see his report, and after his report I'm subpoena his report, and I'm going to pursue further to contact my House of representative and several other people to see if I can get this guy shut down. And yes, I am that asshole. I'm going to make sure that his business doesn't exist a year from now, because this country needs more of that. This country needs more vindictive assholes such as myself. I'm convinced of that.
Okay, and on that high note, shall we close this podcast? Did you have anything else to say? Because, vindictiveness.
Oh, no. Fuck that guy. I'm just going to keep going. We'll see what happens.
It's better than, vandalizing his place.
Oh,
Yeah, because, this way he doesn't know it's coming.
Oh no, it's very important. When I actually manage to run him out of business, I'm going to go there and tell him that I did it. Because because vindictiveness is nothing if they don't know that it's you who's doing it.
By the way, the other kind of interesting bit of this story is that there was like a strong man, so to speak, like watching his back.
That doesn't matter. I don't even know if that's entirely accurate. Oh, and just to confirm that I'm not a complete asshole,
it's true,
and this
though,
is not
because he offered to call the police.
Oh yeah, well he should have actually called the police. I should have actually allowed them to call the police.
And yes.
Yeah.
Anyways,
in any case,
Jack was really rattled.
I wasn't rattled. I was pissed off.
Yeah.
Well. You seem to you see the problem is that
I understand. I'm
doesn't
overly
like
passive
confrontation
and don't like confrontation.
So when I engage in confrontation, she's like shocked. Oh my God! How you talk to those people and you told them you don't like them. They might not like us back. And I'm like, yeah. And more importantly, like you just never experienced me actually being confrontational with people. That was just, that was like 7 out of 10, maybe.
So, do you think if we, just kind of related, we confronted our issues head to head, our racial issues head to head, having a heart to heart, we would get further along?
Well, I can tell you this.
Than having like written passive books about how to deal with racism.
I can tell you this.
Fragility.
I think Beverly Hills Cop and what's that guy's name?
Eddie Murphy.
Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
Did way more for black and white relationships than whatever that bitch's name is.
The author of this book.
Yeah.
Robin DiAngelo.
Robin DiAngelo. I can tell you that much.
Yeah.
What's
You're right. You're right. Beverly Hills Cop, is that what it's
yeah.
called? That's a very, very advanced, advanced racial, like a very good movie that makes a good connection
It's
between
black
white and
people
black
and white
people.
people talking about their real differences and trying to find similarities that can make them both be Americans.
Yeah,
That's what it
that
really
sums
is.
it up very nicely.
Yeah. Versus somebody looking for tiny little differences and looking to amplify them as much as possible. To one piece of art, I would say, is looking to unite people, and another piece of art is looking to divide people. Eddie Murphy's shit was looking to unite people.
Mm-hmm.
Diangelo's stuff is looking to divide people. And that's where I see a problem. I don't want to divide. I want to unite. I want people to honestly talk. Black people and white people have differences.
But you understand that
small differences. They're still human.
It's not going to be easy, because the easier way to deal with it is the passive way, what Robin Diangelo is doing, right? Having the...
But the effective way.
Yeah, the effective way is harder.
The effective way is to admit that there are some things that white people do that suck. There are some things that black people do that also suck. And we should get rid of those things.
Yes.
And then there's other things that we all do as a society where one of us is, very talented at one thing, one at another. We need all those talents, but we don't need all the bullshit that comes with those talents. So that's why when people say, oh, we need to integrate, right? Well, let's put it this way. Think about California, like kind of in California, Mexican food is kind of integrated, right? It's very common to find Mexican food all over the place, right? And it's not something that's for Mexicans. It's for like everybody who can just go and eat food, and it just happens to be like wrapped in tortilla and it's blah, right? You can claim that, oh, that ruined Mexican culture, or you can say, oh, that improved Californian culture, right? Why? Because it's a delicious new type of treat that people have that wasn't available before. It comes from another culture. We still get to keep all of our Californianness, but we can add to it. That's the thing. So as people come in, as we integrate people into our society, we take the good stuff that they bring with them. It's like somebody, think about it this way. If somebody comes to your house to stay for a while because, maybe forever, right? Somebody moves into your house, maybe you get married to somebody and you move into the same house with them, right? And they bring some cool things and you bring some cool things, and now you can all share more cool things. And then you bring some garbage that the other person doesn't like, and maybe it is in fact garbage, and they bring in some garbage that you don't like. And then how do you make a harmonious house? Well, you get rid of the garbage and you keep the cool stuff. That's what we want to do. So there's no, like, when people say, oh, I'm against cultural integration, why? Why don't you want people to be more harmonious?
Also, I agree. Because when you draw that divide, when you try to be inclusive, well, not inclusive, but I don't know.
There's nothing wrong with inclusive either. Like it's okay to say.
Sometimes you see it in people, like when they think you're an alien because you have a different skin color or because you act a certain way.
Yeah, that's bullshit. That shouldn't exist.
I think that's weird.
No, exactly.
And sometimes I get that, like, where people look at me, why are you here? Or sort of like, how are you different than I am?
Like,
let's find the differences between you and I, and it's a little weird and sad.
Well, of course, but it's also wrong. That's the kind of thing we want to fight. I agree with you. We want to fight that, not the Chinese or Chinese business professor saying nigga, nigga, nigga in his class because he's explaining how to pause things, but actual people actually doing mean things, actual people saying, no, I wouldn't live in a black neighborhood even if it was the safest neighborhood in town. No, I wouldn't let my daughter date a black guy even if it was like the wealthiest black guy in town, or just the wealthiest guy in town, or the best or the brightest or the smartest and the kindest black man. It doesn't matter. My daughter is not dating a black man, and that's it, right? Yeah. That's real racism. Yeah. We should fight that. Yeah. We shouldn't fight an elderly white couple who says, oh, I don't want to go to the south side of Chicago because I don't want to be killed. Yeah, they have a good point. They have a much better chance of getting killed in south side of Chicago than they do in fucking Vinetka. So, and Vinica is a north side of Chicago, a suburb. The point is that it's okay to be statistically literate. It's not okay to say, I will never, ever, ever like any black people because they're black. That's racism. To say, I think that neighborhood is kind of dangerous because 5 people died there last weekend, that's just fucking statistics. That's math. Not white people math, just math.
Anyways, what do you think about racism?
Well, I think I kind of just for the last 10 minutes.
Asking our audience.
Oh, okay.
Visit jackandjillshow.com and leave us a comment.
Yeah. Tell us how to identify it better. Tell us what the actual problems are. Because racism is bullshit. We need to fight inequality is bullshit. We need more equality. I'm basically a fucking socialist here.
What practical techniques can we utilize as a country, as a people, like down it to the individual level to make integrating everyone and to make everyone comfortable, in our society. To include everyone and not to isolate
I
anyone.
honestly also don't. If you talk to a lot of black people in the neighborhood, the actual black people, not these like protesters and stuff, not protest. There's nothing wrong with protesters, by the way. Like the people who are just out there because they're promoting their social justice agenda type of people, right? If you ignore those and if you talk to the actual black people in those neighborhoods, they'll tell you the same thing, that they want their neighborhoods to be safer. They want their neighborhoods to be nicer. They want more nice, fancy people in their neighborhoods so they can learn from them. They want those things. They want, like, nobody like wakes up in the morning and says, oh, so lucky to live in a neighborhood where 2 to 5 people die per weekend from gunshots. It's such a blessing to live here. Nobody does that. And it's cruel that we kind of did. And I mean, if you look at the history of Chicago, it's just heartbreaking. Like, the reason why it's so concentrated, the poverty is so concentrated in Chicago is because the black aldermen, in a city, the representatives that represent different districts are aldermen. The black aldermen basically sold out their own people and allowed during the war on poverty in the 60s to build all these projects in their districts, because originally they were supposed to distribute all these low income housing all over the city, so you can have some low income housing here and there and there and there, so that way you can spread out the poor people. And at that point, black people were primarily poor in the Chicago area, and you could spread them out all over the place. And of course, because people were fucking racist back then, all the Italian and all the Irish neighborhoods basically paid off the black leaders of the black neighborhoods to put all of the housing,
to concentrate them,
in that area. And as a result, you ended up where you ended up. You ended up with Cabrini Green, which was a big project where people were dying literally every fucking day from gunshots.
Because it's not literally about the pen that you're stuck in, it's about the people you're with that make you go insane.
Yeah, and you have to understand that it's also like, you can have 1,000 great people, and like 50 pieces of shit with guns will ruin the entire neighborhood. It's not like...
Such as in the case of that... makeshift town they made in Oregon. Was it in Portland? Right?
Or Seattle?
Yeah, Seattle. No, it was in Seattle, right?
Yeah, the Chaz or Chapo or whatever the fuck they called it.
Or whatever, in which, they made a new city or a new town.
And then it was taken down because they started killing people.
Because it
literally
was a murder or something.
Yep.
And then that ruined it for everyone.
Well, but that thing was fucked up as fuck. I mean, you saw people live streaming where they had like black only areas. How can you claim to be How can you claim to be against racism and then have a black only area?
Seriously?
It's like you're self-segregating while fighting segregation. It's mind-boggling. Yes,
We've
seriously.
become idiocracy.
It's fucking stupidity of the highest variety.
Maybe they need some psilocybin. Maybe that's how they'll
I
become more
don't know.
enlightened.
I honestly, I see so many similarities between the social justice warriors and the Trump supporters. It's like two sides of the same shit encrusted coin. Uh, I'm sorry, this is just infuriating. I'm gonna
Don't
go.
talk poorly about shit. It's very important for your immune system.
Okay,
Okay.
the gold encrusted coins. Fuck gold. Um, yeah, let's go. I need to go smoke weed. This is stressful. It just makes me sad and lose faith in humanity. Quite honestly, talking about this shit.
And on a note about the feces, on Instagram, The Economist said that babies need exposure to their mother's feces when they're born because it really strengthens their immune system. Just
Oh yeah.
just
Yeah,
as
and
a
then
side note.
and they were talking about by contrast with cesarean section because so many babies are now delivered by cesarean section. By the way, this is a public service announcement of hour 2 of our podcast. So if you made it this far, if you're a woman and you're ever in labor and you've been in labor for less than 3 hours and your doctor tells you you need a cesarean section, you tell them to go fuck right off because there's no reason why 30 to 40% of babies in this country need to be delivered by cesarean section every single fucking year. And this is the real statistics right now from certain hospitals. And I know San Diego's hospital was getting sued over this because they were over recommending cesarean sections, and doctors in general nowadays are over recommending cesarean sections. The reason for that is because they get paid more for it. So the option is for the delivering doctor, they can spend another 3 or 4 hours with you and get paid $5,000 to $6,000 for it. Oh, God forbid. How can they afford their medical debts? Versus getting paid like 20 grand for doing a 30-minute surgery. So, for the hospital at least. So, as a result, of course, they want to get out there in 20 minutes and just cut you open, yank your baby out, sew it up. They do it all day long. They don't care, right? But for them to actually babysit you and make sure you deliver it properly and naturally, that takes a lot longer.
Yeah, and they have to keep their brunch appointment or dinner appointment
Mm-hmm.
or the golf court or golf.
So the
golfing
rule of
course.
thumb is basically less than 3 hours, don't even fucking talk about it. Less than 5 hours, ask them why. And if you're going like 10 hours plus and you still can't deliver, still find out why. Go into the bathtub, squat. Those tables that they use when they
Oh yeah, those are so not inducive to
Nope.
giving birth.
Nope, they're inducive to the doctor having easy access to you and not having to, worry.
Yeah.
But if you actually want to deliver a baby easily, I think at some point Britney Spears had a statue of herself shitting out a baby, and she was on all fours, and that's how women used to give birth. Women would get on all fours, and it would give birth basically by squatting down, and the baby
That's
would
not
come.
squatting.
Well,
On
whatever.
all fours is not squatting.
Yeah, on all fours, and the baby would come out from the back.
Oh.
That's how you would actually do it.
Yeah, there's something about like depending on which way your baby is facing, like its head, if it's
They're supposed to be facing down.
They're supposed to be upside down, right?
Yeah.
But if the baby is the face is facing outwards, I think it's more difficult than if the baby's face is facing towards your anus. Do you know what I mean? So
I'm thinking. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
So I think it's
because the baby can't bend backwards, but it can bend forward.
Yeah. So the ideal position for your baby to be in is if the baby's face is facing towards your anus, basically.
Well, so it's like the ideal position is your baby is lying in your belly. He or she is turned with the head down and their back towards the front of your belly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then you get on all fours, and then your baby curls, and it curls up towards you, towards your butt, and it just comes out, and your partner can catch it. And such. So,
or it can just go into water if you're in like a bathtub or something.
Yeah, because babies don't even breathe for the first couple of seconds, so you don't even have to worry.
But you need to figure out how to get your baby into that position.
Yeah.
And that's the hard bit.
That's the hard bit, and a lot of doctors don't want to do that bit, and they would rather just cut you open and pull them out.
Oh, you need a midwife or somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I'm not here recommending
Anyways.
delivering your baby first time, by yourself or anything like that. What I'm saying is don't allow doctors to tell you that you need a cesarean section unless they very, very, very specifically tell you why.
Yeah.
That's a question that you should learn how to ask in medicine in general. Whenever you go to a doctor, don't say how, don't say, just keep asking why.
And the phrase "I'm not comfortable with that" is also very important in the medical setting.
Oh yeah, that's true too. But make sure to get your why questions answered because,
And then they'll ask, "Why are you not comfortable with that?"
well, they don't.
Yes, well, sometimes.
Well,
they
just say
do.
it's my religious beliefs.
Yeah.
By the way, yeah, just say that. Whatever they say, oh, I'm not comfortable with this needle. Can you use a smaller butterfly needle? Oh, why? My religious beliefs. I believe in butterflies, and only butterflies can touch my skin.
Yeah, there is some pushback sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So demand your rights. Know your rights. Demand your rights. You have the right to have the medical care you want. You have the right not to have a surgery if you don't want to. The doctors don't have the right to force you to have a surgery. They don't have the last say. Be reasonable. If you're
Well,
a day
you
into
know,
labor and you still can't deliver, and your doctor is saying that your baby is turned the right side up, don't be like, it's okay, let him come out feet first, it's fine. No, actually, like, listen to doctor that. But do your own research and understand that a lot of the times doctors are trying to cut time and increase their billable hours.
yeah. Anyways, we'll see you next time.
And on that bright note, goodbye.